tap into some of we're going to tap into some of those funds to fund our holiday party for members only. So we hope you'll come out and take advantage of that.
One more thing I'd like to add, if I can. One of the things we do in our January meeting is we re-elect our officers for the coming year, and we're short one officer. So if anyone would like to serve as an officer for the Fort Worth chapter of NPAT, please let me or Suzanne or Michelle know, and we'd be glad to chat with you about what the responsibilities are, but there aren't many, and you probably already fulfill them by showing up. So if you're interested, let us know.
Excellent. Thank you. So I am thrilled, very thrilled to introduce Brandi Kelp with the City of Fort Worth. She's my beloved colleague. She's the senior planner in the stormwater department with the city, and she is charged and has almost single-handedly led the open space conservation program. And so I'm very excited to have her here. I don't want to steal her thunder and talk about all the amazing things that we've been able to accomplish as a City of Fort Worth under the open space program, because Brandi's going to talk about it. But Brandi, before you start, could you give us a little bio background of how you got to where you are, what other jobs you've worked with the City of Fort Worth as well? Thanks.
And you exaggerate. This has been a team effort, and we'll talk about our working group. I am local. I grew up in Keller, and I went to UTA. I have an undergraduate degree in geology and a master's in environmental science. As a student researcher, I wrote a paper on the urban heat island of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I've always been very locally focused in all of my work and in academia. I got my start at the City of Dallas in the Office of Environmental Quality on the Sustainability Outreach and Training team. And then I came to Fort Worth and I was our environmental planner, and I led Keep Fort Worth Beautiful for a couple of years. And then when the city started the open space program, I came to stormwater to help lead that effort because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. I've always been an outdoor enthusiast and hiker, so you know, this is very personal to me as well as part of my professional life. And if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, it's not going to let me. Michelle, do you want to share it? I've got my presentation.
Okay, hold on just a
second. It's on our SharePoint site, or if you give me the permission, I can do it either way. But I will say I'm impressed by the turnout. This is a huge group, and I see a lot of familiar names in the audience. I think a lot of you were our stakeholders when we first started working on this program with the Trust for Public Land. Some of our partners in the room, Amber Arsenault with Texas Nature Conservancy. I see you here. See a lot of our community members. So it's really great to kind of catch back up with everyone as we move forward with this. I see someone, Patty, I think that's Patty Kirky, made a remark about Dallas versus Fort Worth. Sorry, Michelle.
See if you can share the screen now.
Oh,
and if
right,
not, if you can't share your screen, then sit on.
I think I got it. Can everyone see?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So I'm just going to give everyone a little bit of background on our program and talk about where we've been, where we are today, and hopefully where we're going to go in the future, and leave everyone here with some tools that you can use that are publicly available. So I'm going to talk about our open space conservation program. The reasoning behind this program, we're one of the fastest growing cities, regions in the country. And we're losing an estimated 50 acres of natural open space per week due to development. And, our population is projected to grow enormously. And so we really have hit a point where it's kind of now or never as far as preserving open space. And so we put together a working group, and it's 13 different city departments and multiple partners. And we have been meeting usually once a week for a little more than 4 years now. So it's been a really collaborative, ongoing effort. I think the reason we've had a lot of success with this program is because we have so many people involved and helping us identify opportunities and really work together. And so I want to talk a little bit about open space versus parkland. So when we're talking about open space, we're not talking about the picture on the right, which is our, mowed and manicured park spaces that are programmed. They may have amenities like playgrounds or basketball courts. We're really talking about, with open space, experiencing nature. And this can be any number of different habitats in different areas and many different sizes of spaces, but we're talking about areas that are maintained in almost completely natural state. And so our mission is to conserve those high quality areas as the city grows. So we're not looking at, redeveloped or brownfields or reclaiming previously developed land. We're really looking at those high quality ecosystems that are still out there. And we have quite a number of them that we've been able to conserve, as well as some that are still out there. We look at our Eastern Cross Timbers habitat, our Fort Worth Prairie, a lot of our endangered ecosystems, our lake shores and riparian areas. These are the really special places in Fort Worth that we want to preserve for future generations. And so when we started looking at how we're going to prioritize areas in Fort Worth for preservation, we developed 7 overarching goal areas. And so all of the data that we collected to put into our prioritization tool really fell into one of these 7 categories. And ecosystem preservation, stream, river, and lake health, and community health were always identified as the top 3 priorities for our community. And what you see there is people understanding that the ecosystem health and environmental health impact community health. And so I think that's a really big focus for our communities, not just the access to recreation, but the mental health impacts of open space and being in nature. And so that's a topic that has come up again and again when we've talked to our community members. And so that was our primary focus, but we're also focused on how to get people access to these spaces to be able to recreate. Also looking at those flood control benefits and some economic development drivers. So all of these things together are how we prioritize open space for conservation. And so when we pulled together all of the data and we prioritized it based on feedback from the public and our stakeholders and our working group, we came up with the overall result that you see in these maps here and that I'll later share with you in our prioritization tool. And so where you see the red are very high priorities, and then the orange are those high and moderate priorities. So you'll see a lot of our prairies that show up. You'll see a lot of our riparian corridors, the Trinity River, some of our smaller stream channels show up. And then we're also looking at those last open spaces that we can even get in some of those highly developed areas. So looking at those smaller properties in that inner city core. And so when we engaged the public, when we did our public survey, what we found is there was very strong support for the open space program across the board. So 90% of the respondents to our survey defined conservation natural areas as very important. 99% support a permanent program, and then 88% strongly support dedicating public funding. And of course, that was borne out in our bond election last year. We were a standalone initiative, and the voters supported 15 million to go toward conservation of open space. And if the council approves our acquisition at tomorrow's meeting, we will have spent about half of that so far. And we've also got a volunteer base out there. You know, hopefully as this program grows and we're able to pull in more staff, we'll be able to leverage a lot of that volunteer enthusiasm that's out there. And so some of the key takeaways, not surprising, things that the public would like to see in open spaces are hiking and walking trails, you know, bird watching and wildlife viewing and educational programming. Environmental education, I think, is it's a big area, and it's something that a lot of people are really starting to appreciate, you know, having that outdoor classroom time. And of course, the amenities to support this, like our paths and trails, picnic areas, and a lot of that educational interpretive signage. And so these are the types of things that our communities are looking for when they're interacting with our open spaces. And so just as an update, we've conserved, I think the total on this is about 422 acres so far. So not too bad for just about 2.5 years of acquisitions. And, you know, we're rolling right along. It won't stop at Lake Arlington. That's the one that's going before council tomorrow. So if you support that, fill out your comment card. But we've got a couple of others in the pipeline as well. So lots of exciting things happening. And so I want to take a break before we go into the tool demo and just see if anyone out there in the audience has any questions about the programs or any of the slides that I've presented today.
Hey, Brandi, I'm curious, what's the site on Jacksboro Highway?
So that was actually about 30 acres that Open Space acquired and then basically handed over to the Fort Worth Nature Center. So it gave a buffer around, I think, when the buffalo pastures and the entrance to the Nature Center. That way, you know, we wouldn't have a lot of commercial development right as you're entering this beautiful natural area.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right. And then I just want to share, this is our program website. So you can come on here and access a lot of the information that I'm going to be talking about today. You can get to our prioritization tool from here. And I also do want to mention the strategy report. This is what we worked on with the Trust for Public Land. And so all of the data and all of the policy recommendations and long-term strategies that we worked on through that stakeholder engagement process, along with the Trust for Public Land, are in this document. So you can come in here and view all of the responses that we got from the public, and just really look at how we arrived where we are today and how we developed some of the policy recommendations that came out of this report. And then we've also got at the very end some spotlight areas around town where you can, these are the different goal areas. So this will show you all of the types of data and how we prioritized all of those 7 goal areas. And then we've also got our spotlight areas around town that talk about the different ecosystems and just the types of areas that we're trying to preserve and why these places are special. And so there's a lot of great information in here, as well as some beautiful aerial photography from the Trust for Public Land. And so I encourage everyone, if you haven't seen this report, definitely go in to our website and take a look at that.
Hey, Brandi, there's a question in the chat about where is the funding for the land acquisition coming from?
Sure. So there's two different sources. Our original source of funding came from the natural gas lease. So the city of Fort Worth, because there are fracking sites on city property, we receive revenue from that. And so we received a little bit more than 8 million in revenue from the general gas lease, along with another nearly 3 million from the water gas lease. And the water gas funds are to protect areas in the water quality zones around Lake Worth to have benefits to water quality, because Lake Worth is an impaired water body, but it's also a drinking water reservoir. And so that's about 11 million. And then we've received another 15 million in bond funds. And so all of that funding can be spent on either acquisitions or capital projects on the properties that we're acquiring.
Thank you.
And then I should mention, we received a $150,000 grant for our Broadcast Hill property from the North Texas Community Foundation, their Environment and Conservation Fund. So that's a project that's allowing us to put in 2 miles of natural surface trails, do some invasive species removal. We've got a lot of privet out on that site, some targeted herbicide application, and then an amazing internship program that Michelle led this summer. And if y'all aren't aware of that, you should be, because it was one of the most impressive things to our grant issuers. They were really excited about the findings from that. But I want to jump in. So I want everyone leaving the meeting today knowing how to operate our open space tool. This is a very powerful tool with a lot of data. It's available for any member of the public to use. And so I kind of going to give you a day in the life of open space whenever we're reviewing properties. So for example, I'll zoom in to what will hopefully after tomorrow be our latest acquisition. We've got a 153-acre property here on Lake Arlington. And we can go in here. Right now we've got our combined open space priorities turned on. And so this is with all of the different goals stacked on top of each other. This shows us that it's a really high priority across many of our goal areas. But we can go in here and we can view the results for each different area. So when we're looking at recreation, this property scores very highly for that. And then we can go in and dig a little further and see why. It's been identified as an iconic natural place. It's one of our last public shorelines available. It helps fill some of the gaps in our 10-minute walk. We've got communities around here that don't have access to a lot of parkland and open space, and so this will help fill some of that need. It's got potential for trails and connectivity. We're hoping to put in a trail that actually runs the entire length of the northern shoreline around Lake Arlington. And we've also got some schools and libraries in here where we can see that there's open space nearby. And so you have access to all of the data and all of the different criteria that were used to prioritize all of these different open spaces. So you can come down and really drill into the data with community health criteria. I know that this is a really important factor whenever our communities are talking about access to open space and parks. We've got information on stream, river, and lake health. So this will show how open space can help provide a buffer for those stream channel areas and lake shores. And then we also have flood control in here. So our FEMA floodplain and potential high water areas are highlighted on here, because if we preserve open space upstream of those, it helps mitigate floods. Economic development, we know that preserving open space and having trails can really be an economic driver. There's a lot of data out there around trail-oriented development and how big of an economic impact that can have on communities. And what's great is that type of development really tends to benefit the local community, because it's really focused on smaller scale businesses, restaurants, those types of places where people are visiting when they're out for a walk or a bike ride. We've seen that on the Katy Trail in Dallas, as well as other areas. And then, of course, our ecosystem preservation will show areas, and this could include anything from riparian habitat, but we'll also see it highlight our really heavily wooded properties, a lot of our prairie properties out west here. Those are all going to show up on our ecosystem preservation. So you can really see everything that went into deciding, all the way down to the very fine grain, how does one parcel among all the thousands and thousands of parcels across the city, how that compares. And you can access all of the information. If you click on a property, you can run the parcel report. There's a button down here that you can click on. And what that will do is provide a PDF that has all of the major data points for that property. And then you can take a look at that and see what percentage of the property has tree canopy or is priority ecosystem. So when we look at the parcel report, this is a really powerful tool for helping us drill down a little further and understand if this is really a property we want to acquire. It'll show you the percent of the property in a floodplain, if it's conserved, if it's adjacent to public lands. You've got the carbon sequestration estimates in here. So lots of really valuable information. This particular parcel has nearly 82% tree canopy. And so it has all the administrative boundaries, so you can see which council district it's in. So lots and lots of information. All of the big factors for the different goal areas like community health, equitable access. It will give you the criteria and data behind that for this parcel. So it's a very, very powerful tool for helping us really analyze each property as a group and determine whether we're going to pursue acquisition. And you can run a report for multiple parcels at a time. So if I zoom all the way in, and over here on the left-hand side of my screen, I can grab my parcel report selector, and I can drag it across the screen and run a report that will give me the data for each one of these. And so I can generate that parcel report. I can add properties to that. So you've got a lot of information at your fingertips, and you can print maps from here, and it will give you the map along with the criteria and a legend that you've selected here. So this is something that I would encourage anyone who's interested in open space, or even just curious about the types of green spaces that are left in Fort Worth. You know, come in here and play around with us. There's just lots of great information. We'll be updating all of these layers in 2024. So that's something that's underway with our GIS team, hopefully getting some new data and updating a lot of the map. and then our context layers up here, these weren't necessarily used in the model to produce the results, but there's, again, a whole suite of data sets in here that are really useful. Under demographics, we've got our EPA equity indicators, and these were pulled directly from the environmental justice tool that EPA uses. And so this will give you really important information about, you know, at-risk populations and demographics. It shows us, you know, where we have higher percents of low income, or people living in linguistic isolation, or that have, you know, lower educational attainments. And this can help us make decisions. There have been times where we've looked at properties and we've determined that open space might not be the best use. For example, we were looking at one of the properties up here, and we realized that all of these around here are already preserved. This is Tarrant Regional Water District. This is Gateway Park. There wasn't a huge need for additional open space when we already have 200 acres nearby. But what this neighborhood could really use would be mixed use development. Things that would inject direct economic benefit to that neighborhood, bringing in the types of jobs where people who may have English as a second language or have a lower educational attainment could find work. And so we're able to really holistically look at, you know, where not only is open space appropriate, but, you know, helping pull together bigger pictures for our communities and making the right decisions for them. And so I know this is a lot to take in. There's a lot of information here. So I want to answer any questions, because I know this can be really overwhelming, but I definitely want to make sure that anyone who's curious about the tool, that you know, I answer all of those questions for you.
So Brandi, we had a couple of questions in the chat. I tried to answer them, but one question was, where does the data come from for the tool, and are all the categories?
You kind of cut out right there, and Michelle, but I will say the data for the tool came from many different sources. So some of it was City of Fort Worth data that we already had. Some of it, like impaired streams, came from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We got our natural land cover data sets. Some of these natural vegetation covers, I think, from the Texas Parks and Wildlife. Our heritage trees data layer came from the City of Fort Worth Tree Farm. So there's many different sources of data in here. Like I said, we use the EPA environmental justice information. So we have the land surface temperature from satellite data. So lots and lots of different sources that went into this. And I will say, when we were prioritizing the data, we tried to give higher weights to data sets that are really fine grained, that we have lots of good data, and lower priority to the data sets where it's coarser, or we just didn't have as much information. So we really tried to be very thoughtful about the data that we used and how we used it. And Michelle, what was the other part of the question?
I think you addressed it, but Josh was asking, are all of the categories weighted equally for the combined layer?
Oh, yeah. So the weighting you can actually view in the strategy report. If it's not in the report itself, all of the data that was used and the weighting that we applied is available in the appendices for the report. And so you can come in and view the exact weighting criteria that we applied. So we include the source for the data, just the general source. And then we include the weights that we applied. And all of the weighting was based on public feedback, as well as our open space working group feedback, based on what the public wanted, as well as the data that was available. And so all of that is available here. We've tried to make everything very transparent and really share as much information as possible on that. So you can dig in as deep as you want to go, and hopefully any information that you're looking for will be in here. Did we have any other questions, Michelle? And it does not have to be about the open space tool. It can be about our program in general.
I think you got it. You talked about the funding. Joanne had asked how to get more information about Rock Creek Ranch Park. The Parks Department is right now hiring a consultant to work on the master plan for the park. And at some point, it will be open for public input.
Yeah, and so I'm sure most of you know, but if any of you are unaware, Rock Creek is 300 acres in this general area that the city was able to acquire. Let me see if it shows up yet on our conserve lands. We're still working on all of these data sets, but I know, oh, there it is. So that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is Rock Creek Park. And as you can see, it connects into the U.S. Army Corps property here on Lake Benbrook. So yeah, no, open space and parks. This was a joint acquisition. So at least 40 acres of this will remain open space. And so the consultant that Parks hired is going to be weighing all those different factors and looking at the best way to, I don't want to say develop this park, because I think a lot of it will wind up being more of a natural area, but really how best to make this available for public interaction. We're really excited about it. And I'll highlight, we did acquire very recently, it's not on here yet, another about 40 acres on this side of Lake Benbrook. And it's right on the West Clear Fork Trinity that runs through the U.S. Army Corps property into Lake Benbrook. And so, years down the line, when we're looking at a lot of our capital projects, we've considered this for perhaps a kayak launch that would allow people to kayak all the way through to Lake Benbrook. So we're looking at not only these spaces individually and how they can serve the communities around them, but also how they can connect to other green spaces and parks through trail systems and kayak trails and things like that. So all of our communities are connected to open space, and they can really serve as a destination along our trail systems. And then I did want to mention, so many of you may have heard that the mayor recently announced the Good Natured Green Space Initiative. And so just so everyone knows, Open Space is working with Mark McDaniel, who's been identified as the city's green space champion. And he's been tasked with preserving an additional 10,000 acres of open space. And it's really green space, so that includes parks, open space, our rights of way like medians, any of those green space areas. And they're really looking at it from a public-private partnership aspect, and looking at whether we need to develop a conservancy. So we have different tools in the toolbox, where we have parks working on the parkland and park natural areas, open space really focused on ecosystem preservation and natural areas, and then the green space initiative focused on all green areas across town and how all of these programs can complement one another and work together. And so we're really excited. We've got all of these initiatives really starting to coalesce and come together. I think we'll see some really exciting things coming up in the future. And so again, if there's any other questions, I'd love to answer them, but I just really want to thank everyone for the opportunity to talk about what we've done with our program and about the bright future for open space and green space in Fort Worth. It's a really exciting time to be working on this.
Right, yes, if anyone has additional questions, you can unmute yourself, and then we'll try to read questions that are popping up in the chat. Let's see. Dick asked, how long did this project from start to finish? So how long did it take to get this up and running, I think is this question.
Anyone who's worked in government will know that this has gone at lightning pace because it started as a single question in July of 2019, where a city manager asked if the city were to want to acquire the top 20 open space properties in Fort Worth, how would we go about identifying those? And from that single question, it's grown into the program that you see today. So a little under 4.5 years. Which is very fast in the world of government.
Yeah, exactly. It has gone lightning speed for sure.
And I really credit that to the working group and to our partners and just the collaborative nature of everything that we've done. I feel like having everyone working together and a lot of passion, whether it's someone, like Michelle, who lives and breathes this, or our economic development department that's created policies around open space and how companies moving here can help preserve it. Everyone at the city is looking at creative solutions to this and coming up with different ways to work with one another.
And so my asked, not me, but Emmy Ling asked, if we have any suggestions for replicating the success of the city of Fort Worth in other cities or county?
I definitely think having a collaborative group, so pulling all of the departments that touch on open space into one room and really looking at it holistically has been a huge part of the success. The data, I can't understate how important that aspect has been. And working with the Trust for Public Land has, certainly given us a huge advantage and has created this very powerful tool. But even if you're not there yet, just looking at the data that you have and that's available through partners that you can use, even if I didn't have the model analysis in here, just having all of this data in one area where we can look at the demographics of a neighborhood, where we can look at the open space that's available, it's still a really, really powerful tool. And so, utilizing that data has been a key part of it. And I think the other thing that made a huge difference, our stakeholder group was more than 65 members. I've never worked with a larger group, but they were very passionate and involved stakeholder group. And we had everyone from impact and environmental organizations to our development community at the table. And so giving everyone a stake in this and bringing in people who might not seem like traditional open space partners was really helpful in pushing this forward. I think it also helped spread the word about the program and help people like developers understand what we're doing and why we're trying to do that. And so we've had some success stories that came out of that, where they're helping us, preserve some of that priority open space on properties that they're developing and look at creative solutions. For example, at Primrose Station, we're working with a developer who's doing some multifamily development on this property, and they needed some capital. So they created quite a large park as part of this development, and open space is buying about 35-ish acres of prairie and wetland for $156,000. And it basically, we're only paying for their park dedication fee, but it's enough to make a difference for that developer. So they're trying to do the right thing by creating more habitat, building at a higher density, and leaving that park and open space. And they're getting some of that capital to, build in a more sustainable way. So it really was just a win-win across the board on that. And
Yeah,
so
actually on that project, we're going to meet them this week to make recommendations on how to manage part of it and on seeding if needed.
yeah, so bring those partners to the table and let them know what you're trying to do and why it's important, and also how they can benefit from this. We've seen over and over, homes that are near open space and near trails have higher property values, but it's also a higher quality of life. It's the type of development that people moving here want to see. And so I think that there's room for all of this, if we're willing to work together on sustainable solutions.
So Brandi, Amber made a comment, said this is really great information. Thank you. I hope that other cities and communities can learn from the city's investment in open space. And then Sam asked, how can we convince other cities in DFW to do this? Like with lots of exclamation points and question marks at the end of the sentence. And then Katie asks, is Dallas doing this? So I'll leave those 3 comments.
So Dallas did something similar with their park dedication. This tool actually, when I was at Dallas, they built something similar to this, but for parks. And I think open space was included in that. We just kind of took it to the next level and really built on what they had done. So it's kind of similar to that. I know Dallas has some projects. I think I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's the Bunker Sands and a few other areas, the Oak Cliff Nature Preserve. So there are definitely areas where they're looking at. Of course, they're more built out than Fort Worth, so that definitely presents a challenge. But I've actually seen a lot of excitement from other cities. I attended the Texan by Nature Conservation Summit last Tuesday, and I was approached by folks who work for a lot of cities in the area who are really excited about what we're doing. I know Cedar Hill and a couple of other representatives I got to talk to. We're really looking at this as a model, and I know that in the future, as we build this out, we really want to work with our surrounding cities like Denton and Dallas, Arlington, all of these, to make these greenbelt connections and connect our trails, and looking at this, from a regional perspective. And I think getting a conservancy, really active in lots of properties in a very urban area, I think can drive some excitement. I think right now DFW tends to get overlooked by a lot of conservancies. I think the feeling is it's kind of too late for us, but I don't think that's true. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here, but it's going to look different than it does in the Hill Country or out in West Texas. because when you're looking at a really heavily developed part of town, you don't need 200 acres to make a difference. You need what we bought here at Nosilla, 3 acres, to make a really big difference in a community that's densely developed, or 24 acres of cross timber forest. And so looking at the difference in opportunity in urban areas, I think will really help us, really drive this forward.
Okay, and so I'm just going to read more in the chat. Joanne said, nice to see Fort Worth taking the lead in this. Karen said, love that Fort Worth is taking the initiative to save and preserve open spaces. And then Sam said, looking through the North to Central Texas Council of Governments, sustainable development needs more open space initiatives. He put a link there. Dallas Parks and Open Space Program, for the county, Dallas County. He put a link in the chat for their open space program. Katie said, thank you, Brandi and Michelle, and all of y'all for doing this amazing work. And I would also say thank you to Katie, because she's also doing amazing work in the Blackland chapter of Native Prairies Association. Joanne said, are you requiring developers to use more sustainable methods in their development, as in using native landscapes and not covering their open space with grasses that will require water, or at least encouraging it?
Gotten there yet, but we do have one other exciting development. We brought in a Fuse Corps fellow who's going to be working with me over the next year. He's already started. We are going to be looking at riparian area protection in Fort Worth. And so we're currently in the research and benchmarking phase for what we want our policy to look like. And within the year, we're looking to have an update to our subdivision ordinance for riparian area protection. We're not sure what's going to be included in that, but we're simultaneously doing a lot of data gathering around erosion control and stream banks and, stormwater and flooding. And so we're looking at how all of those things work together and how a riparian area protection policy could help both with natural area preservation, but also mitigate a lot of those impacts from fully developed riparian areas. And so we are working on that right now.
Yeah, so as you can see,
irons in the fire.
yeah, I was about to say that. As you can see, the city has its hands full of lots of projects, and they're all kind of interconnected between the different departments. And we're working with partners like Native Prairies Association of Texas. So I wanted to open it up for anyone who wants to just ask a question vocally outside of chat. I'll give you a minute to see if anyone wants to pipe in.
Someone just mentioned TRWD. Yes, so we are actually in the process of creating a memorandum of understanding with them as part of our green space initiative. So we definitely work with them and our national paddle trail. We're looking at a property that could be a kayak launch for that. So yeah, we love partnerships. That's how we get more done. And like I said, I just want to take a moment because I see so many familiar names in here. Thank you to everyone who was a stakeholder in this project. I really hope that you feel that we took that vision and, really ran with it, and we couldn't have done it without all of you. It was a tremendous effort, and I think we'll see continued success because of the passion that's around it.
Yeah, thank you, Brandi. We had one more question asking about the Fuse program, and I'm actually not familiar with if they wanted to Google that and see if a Fuse fellow could help their city, what would they look for on the internet?
It's Fuse Core. So I know they work with cities all over the country. And it's really, that's what they're there for, is supporting governments. And so yeah, definitely look into this. We got a grant that covered a little more than half of the cost for bringing this person on board. He'll be with us for a year. And it's an executive level fellow. So this is someone who's very accomplished in their career and can come in and really hit the ground running to lead an effort. And so that's what we needed. We needed capacity, and AJ is bringing that capacity on board and providing that that labor that we just didn't have you know, the time for. And so we're really excited about this. It's something that's been on the, you know, it's been on the radar for a long time, but we had to keep reshuffling priorities. And so now with him coming in, you know, we'll be able to accomplish a lot more quickly. And that is something that you'll see if you're working across your city on an initiative like this. We've seen so many other projects and programs come out of this. We're currently finalizing the draft of our urban forestry master plan. Parks is gearing up for their you know, revamp of the park and open space master plan. That was separate, but a lot of other things have come directly out of the collaboration on open space, when we all started talking about things that we'd like to see and that a lot of departments have been talking about individually for all these years. And now we're seeing movement on a lot of these initiatives.
And then I think one last question, and it's 8 o'clock. Josh was asking about all the utility easements, and wouldn't it be great to have trails and pollinator gardens or prairies beneath them? And so
Yeah.
are we working on easements or collaborating?
Yes, and I think that's where Mark McDaniel, through our Good Nature program, will really be able to make some big strides. Encore gave the money to get that up and running, and so you know, we're definitely looking at their easements as well as others, and so that is definitely on the docket for that green space program. So like I said, we're going to be collaborating between parks and good natured and open space to really coordinate a lot of these efforts and augment each other's programs. And so thank you everyone for letting me present today and for all of your great questions.
Brandi, thank you so much for sharing all this great information. We really feel better when we hear that things are moving in the right direction. It's invigorating. Thank you.
Everyone, go use the tool and just see what you come up with.
Thank you, Brandi. And I guess we'll see you Wednesday.
Bye, everyone.
I have a quick question.
Oh,
How do we save the chat so we have all these links that are in there? Does anybody know?
Yes, it saves automatically to the cloud.
So it's going to be on, it's going to link to our.
This will all save to the Zoom account. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I need to know. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Brandi.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.